Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Independent Thought. My name is Desmond Price. For today's episode, I am joined by William Compton, a candidate for the 2nd Congressional District of Kentucky. William, thank you for coming on Independent Thought today.
For having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Now, you are the first person that I've had come on the podcast who is running for a position of this nature. And so I felt like it was very important for me to just start with a very just basic and honest question, just so as me, the interviewer, why exactly did you decide to run for Congress? Like, what was it that led you to this moment?
So the reason why I'm wanting to run is because I've lived in my area for my entire life. I live in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and I've lived in Warren County my whole life. I've grew up here. And in the time that I've been alive, everything that I've seen my grandparents and my parents struggle with in our area, I'm seeing all of the students that I teach, their parents and their families struggling with the same things. So I'm not seeing anything changing. And that is what has motivated me to run for this position, is because I want to make that change and I want to make everyone's lives better.
Yeah, that's an incredibly noble thing. I mean, honestly, right now there feels like there's more or less a lack of that in Washington. So I definitely appreciate that perspective. Now, kind of like getting a little personal for a bit, before we kind of dive into the deeper issues and the topic by topicness of it all. In your everyday life, you told me that you're a music educator, that you are involved in string orchestra, I believe.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So just out of curiosity, as somebody who's not involved in the arts in an everyday fashion the way that you are, do you believe that the arts are underfunded in our country, and what impact do they have on the children who that you are an educator of?
To answer your first question, most definitely they are underfunded, whether it's music, whether it's just normal art such as like painting or sculptures or anything of that nature, and even things like our family consumer science, which is a related arts course that students can take in our school system. All of those are underfunded. Uh, they are more beneficial than people think, and I can only speak about music since that's kind of the field I'm in at the moment.
Right.
Uh, but they, especially with this pandemic, these courses have not only been a relief to students, but they've also helped them get through the hard times that we've endured this last year. Um, I know with music, there's even science backing up to where students who even just listen to music, and if you play music, it gets exponentially greater. Their brain functions increase tenfold,
Hmm.
and they're able to retain more information, and they're able to learn more stuff in their other classes. And I mean, think about it. Growing up, I learned alphabet, singing the ABC song. Uh, I don't use it in my everyday life, but I still remember some math terminologies, quadratic formula. I can spout it off. I have to sing it as Pop Goes the Weasel. I never use it, but I remember it.
Yeah.
And so music helps with those brain functions and helps make those neural connections. And that's something that a lot of people discount when they think about music class. They just think it's all fun and games. And students are having fun, but it's also benefiting them neurologically.
Okay. And you're not going to get any disagreement from me. I personally feel as though the arts are vastly underfunded in our country. Um, I'm hoping that more people like you can get into office and make a difference about that. But speaking of office, I know that you are currently the city commissioner of Plum Springs, Kentucky. Is that correct?
That is,
Yeah.
yes.
So tell me a little bit, like, what exactly does a city commissioner do? And how do you think that that experience will serve you as you attempt to, run, for Congress?
So, a little background information before I go into that. Plum Springs, it's a really, really small city just outside of Bowling Green, Kentucky. Um, I know in our last election, the city commissioner who had the most on their ballot had only 80 something votes. It's a really small city. Um, Essentially, with this city, the responsibilities have been just to ensure, well, one, the city doesn't go into debt with any of our financial obligations, making sure that we are taking care of the city to the best of our ability. And we're trying to bring more business into the city. That's kind of been a extra part that we're trying to increase our revenue and build that financial stability here.
Okay, okay. So, when it comes to, focusing on now, like this transition towards running for Congress, I know that one of the things that we had spoken about previously was that you thought that some members of Congress were voting against the interests of the everyday person. Now, tell me a little bit more about why you feel that way and what would you do differently if you were in office?
Yeah, so I do feel that way wholeheartedly on almost every front. I'll use the most recent examples. We Congress had a vote to give the COVID relief fund
Yeah.
out, the last COVID relief fund out, and our current representative, who is a GOP member, didn't vote
Yes.
for it, and has not even said since then why he hasn't voted for it. Just didn't vote for it because every other Republican did not vote for it. When I've heard a lot of people who are struggling say, "Okay, this is helping me get through.
Right.
This is helping." Um, we've had votes in Congress where during the pandemic that were for childcare, giving money for people so they can have childcare, so the parents can work, and so they didn't have to stay home, especially if they were single parents. And again, he voted against that. So we saw many working families who they either lost income for a while because the parent had to stay home with their child if they were a
Right.
single parent, or they just lost one of the two incomes, which hurt a lot of people badly. Um, and again, there's a whole slew of them. I could spend all night on a lot of the interests that they're voting against with the people here. Um, Another one is the uh, act that helped older Americans in the workforce, which kind of made sure that they were taken care of and they weren't being discriminated against in the workforce. And our district has a lot of older Kentucky citizens. And again, our representative voted against it. And it's not helping the people here at all. And in fact, in some cases, especially with the Helping the Older Americans in the Workforce Act, uh, it's almost like a slap in the face to some of our citizens. And again, we never know why they voted. He votes against anything. It's always just a vote, and then he goes on, and that doesn't sit well with me. Especially me being an educator, I like to know why with a lot of things. So
Right.
it just doesn't sit well with me. And then again, there's a lot more examples of why he has voted against the interests of the people here.
Yeah, and this kind of like leads me to my next question, more or less, which is, say, you are elected to be the representative of the second district. Now, what would be, because there are so many different issues happening, not only in Kentucky, but across our country. And if you were elected, what would be the first piece of legislation that you would want to address?
The there's kind of two that I would want to address really quickly.
Sure.
One of the first ones would obviously be healthcare for me. Everyone has to have healthcare at some point. Uh, and we are actually seeing studies where a lot of people who go into bankruptcy medical debt is a lot of those
Yes.
reasons why they go into bankruptcy. And so seeing people who have to choose between a life-saving procedure or having a home for the next month, it shouldn't happen in Kentucky or in America at all. And a little personal story, I actually, when I spoke with you, I talked about this a little bit. I got my finalized bill. So back last month, I am severely allergic to poison ivy,
Yeah.
and I had to go and get a steroid shot at the emergency room because my eyes were swollen shut and it was hard to breathe and everything. That one visit, if I had no insurance whatsoever, would have cost me $1,415.20. And so that was eye opening myself to see that number just because I had to get a steroid shot to ensure that my throat didn't close up from an
Right.
allergic reaction. And so I just imagine these working Americans who have had to dip into their savings or use all of it to stay afloat last year. And then if they're out doing yard work and something like that happens, that's a big hit to someone and
Right.
causes a lot of stress and again could hurt someone and maybe cause them to go bankrupt. Um, and so I really would want to pass a single payer Medicare for all system just to make it affordable for everyone and to ensure that it isn't tied to employment. Everyone has a chance to that health care, that
Okay.
quality health care. And then the second one that I would really focus on, I would kind of do them tandem together. It's working on our climate crisis,
Yes.
which is another big deal that we are facing. You know, with the massive heat waves we're seeing across the West, and here in Kentucky, we're just seeing massive rainstorms just popping up left and right now. And there are places that are having some flooding issues right now.
Right.
It's, you can tell it's changing, and we have the ability to fix that before it gets irreversible. And so I would really push for things like the Green New Deal to bring renewable energy sources back to Kentucky and to just the nation in general, and just clean up our environment. Because once I'm dead and gone, the children that I'm teaching and their children, I want to make sure that they have a world that they can live in, and they can not have to worry about, can I breathe or am I going to be on fire because of this storm, because of massive heat waves. So
Yeah, no, it's something that we're dealing with here out in the West where I'm at. I look out my window and I see wildfire smoke in my community right now. I mean, it was blowing into my apartment last night. So it is very real for me. I experienced this. I mean, the first few years I lived here, it wasn't as relevant. Now it feels like it's almost every single year we're dealing with this. But unfortunately, the Green New Deal has such a negative connotation around it, due in large part to lots of people in the political sphere and in the media who have spent a lot of time trying to attach its name to just negative propaganda, more or less. Uh, Now, you are in a state that you have told me is not a red state, but a gerrymandered state. But with that being said, how would you convince the people of Kentucky that they, in fact, would benefit and they do need a Green New Deal?
yeah, so um, I'm not saying there's anything bad about what I'm about to say. It's just human nature. Everyone, they vote for what they think is going to impact themselves, which honestly is why we ended up with Donald Trump. They thought he would help them in some way. And with the Green New Deal, we have to start talking about how it's going to help the economy, how it's going to help the job growth, how it's
Right.
going to give the sustainable job, long lasting jobs. And we need to make sure that they know that we would invest into them as workers and give them reliable work. Uh, I know with Kentucky, we have the coal mines in the eastern part of the state. Well, those are running dry.
Yeah.
So putting uh, maybe solar energy out there and training them how to use it and guaranteeing them, you know, 2 years. If you work here for 2 years, you almost like a 10-year thing with teachers, like work here for 2 years. And so we can train you. If you want to stay, you can stay. If not, then you're free to choose whatever job you want or something like that, just to invest into them. And again, it would be safer for the workers, give them benefits to ensure that they have everything they need, and would help our environment. And so just making sure they know it'll help our economy, it'll help the working class people, it will help you.
Right. And, speaking of the economy, we were talking before about the fact that one of the crops that is popping up well, that it's not popping up, but that is, relevant for Kentucky for the longest time has been tobacco. And you had mentioned that you thought that it might be good for the people of Kentucky, just from an economical standpoint, to start utilizing marijuana more. And so, kind of along that line, do you believe that marijuana should be legalized nationwide?
Oh, most definitely. um there are, I cannot remember the exact number. It's like 16 or 17 states now that have legalized recreational marijuana usage,
Yep,
in
I'm in
which
one of them.
one of the first ones was Colorado. And we've seen ever since they've legalized it, that they've started having a surplus in money in their state. They've been able to tax it like they do alcohol sales. Uh, they've been able to create even machines that are essentially like breathalyzers for marijuana use, to ensure that no one's driving under the influence.
Yeah.
And and all of these can be done. We have a neighboring state, Tennessee, which you can buy it down there. And so people are already going down there to buy it in Tennessee.
Hmm.
And that's money that we're losing out. That's money that could be taxed. That's money that could come back into Kentucky. And we're losing out on that. That money could be used in so many ways to help the citizens of Kentucky. And with the success it's had in other states, I think it would just be something beneficial to go on ahead, make it legal in all of the states. And then on top of that, make sure to expunge the records of anyone who has possession of marijuana, since it is illegal in a quarter of the nation.
Right.
We need to ensure that no one's getting unfairly put in a prison system.
Right. And actually, I was just about to ask you that question anyway. But, for the people who are in prison right now for marijuana possession, not distribution, but possession, uh, do you think that those people should be released from prison for that offense because of the fact that it is now legal?
I do. I do. I feel like they should be released, and again, their records should be expunged um, for that, just because of that. Um, I always tell everyone when I talk about this, think of the alcohol prohibition. If someone was arrested during the prohibition for possession of alcohol, and then they repealed it to where it was legal, it wouldn't be fair to that person who was put in jail if it was backtracked. And so it's
Right.
the same situation with marijuana. So
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. That's my personal stance on it. I feel like people who are in jail for marijuana possession, for just possessing a plant, I mean, it's a little ridiculous. But on that note, everyone, we're gonna take a quick break and we'll be right back with more with William Compton. But don't go anywhere. Make sure you check out this clip from our sponsor. We'll be right back.